Hooray, this is the day we've been waiting for. Welcome everyone to Variables and Algebraic Expressions. So we're finally going to do some algebra today. We're going to stop doing reviewing. Now, what we've done up to this point is we have done some addition and subtraction and multiplication and division and even exponents. So now we are going to, and we did order of operations, now we are going to talk about algebraic expressions, and we're gonna start talking about variables. Now, you may be thinking, this math has been really easy so far. Let me just warn you or caution you that we're going to go through the same process again, talking about, we're going to talk about negative numbers. We're going to then talk about decimal numbers, and then we're going to talk about fractions, and we're kind of going to go through the same list where we talk about all those different types of numbers, and we're going to add, subtract, multiply, divide, raise to powers, and use variables and algebraic expressions. So that's kind of a rundown of what we're going to do for quite some time, and then we'll do a lot of other stuff as well. But just so you know that we are really reviewing our basic math, and so that we're making sure that we're really good at it, but we want to get started applying our basic math skills to algebra concepts. And the big concept in algebra is the variable. So let's talk about what that is. A variable is just a letter that stands, it could be any symbol, but usually it's a letter that stands for a number. And a variable normally stands for a specific number, but it stands for a specific number that we don't know what it is. So if I say x, what I mean is there's some number out there, I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to call it x, but it does exist and it's out there somewhere, and hopefully the math will allow us to figure out what it is at some point. Or maybe someone will just tell us. So an algebraic expression is simply a sentence that contains variables in it. So if I said my variable is x, and I say x plus 3, then that just means whatever the number x is, I'm going to add to it 3, once I figure out what x is. All right, we can do multiplication, so 5x, and we can do subtraction, minus 7. Those are variable expressions. We can even raise variables to a power, so we can say x squared minus y, and we could say divided by z. So there we go. Those are all variable expressions. It's just, and we are doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and exponents with or powers with numbers, but some of the numbers are unknown to us, and so we're going to just write them as letters. Now, you probably say to yourself, well then, how do we do the math? Like, how do I do x plus 3? And the answer is you can't. You don't know what x is until I know what x is. I can't do it. So here's what has to happen. Somebody either has to tell me what x is, or much later on we'll learn how to figure out what x is from equations. But for now, in order for us to be able to deal with x or unknown values, somebody has to tell us, and then we'll know. So if I have and so it's kind of like a little key here. I'm going to put this up at the top. I'm just going to say, well, x equals, let's say x equals 4, and let's say that y equals, let's say y equals 1, and that z equals 5. Okay, now once somebody tells me what the variables stand for, then I can plug that in to my expression, and I can then simplify. So x plus 3, now that I know that x is 4, becomes 4 plus 3. And I can do that. 4 plus 3 is 7. So now I know what x plus 3 is because somebody told me what x is, and so now I can do the math. 5x minus 7 becomes 5 times, and here's a little trick. When you are evaluating, evaluate is just a fancy word for somebody told me what x stands for, and so I'm going to put x, that number, whatever x is 4 in this case. I'm going to put that number 4 in place of x in every situation where I see it. So what we're doing here, and I should write that down, we are the process of evaluating. We're evaluating these algebraic expressions for the given values of x, y, and z. And of course, so far I've only done expressions that have x in them, but we'll get to the y and the z in just a minute. So I took my expression 5x minus 7, which means 5 times x minus 7, and I replaced the x with a 4, but notice that I want to be really careful here, and I put parentheses around the 4 so that I wouldn't think it was 54 minus 7, right? So 5 times 4, or 5x means 5 times x doesn't mean 50x. 50, I don't know how to say that. But when you put a 4 there, it kind of looks like 54, unless I do something to show that that's a multiplication problem. So best way to do it is with parentheses. So 5 times 4 is 20. Blue. Minus 7, which is 13. Now, I'm working across because I made the mistake of writing out all my problems at once, just like I recommend you don't do. So normally you would do one problem at a time and work down. So you would say 5 times 4 is 20, minus 7, and then 20 minus 7 is 13. And so you're writing it down like this. And this is a good method. I call this the Dorito chip method, where you have a big, long sentence, and then you do one step, and then you do another step until you get all the way down to one answer. And it looks like kind of a big upside-down triangle. So that's what you're looking for. Let's do the last one here, and let's just rewrite it. Well, first we'll rewrite it, so we're going to take out the x, and we're going to put it in its place of 4. And x was being squared, so we'll write 4 squared. Minus, and then minus what? Minus the y. The y is a 1. I'm going to put it in parentheses, even though I don't need to. The parentheses are not necessary on the y there, but I like to just be careful and make sure that I don't write a number that is confusing because the variable means one thing. Like if I have a variable next to 5, it means times, but if I have a number next to 5, it means 50 something. So you just need to be careful with that. Okay, so 4, we're going to do the order of operations now. 4 squared is 16 minus the 1, don't need the parentheses, and over the 5. 16 minus 1 is 15 by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So you're getting a second dose of order of operations when you evaluate algebraic expressions. All right, I am going to leave to you to read about translating phrases and variable expressions. Super, super important. Please read through that lesson and be very careful doing your practice problems. Make sure that you are understanding how to set up word sentence or translate word sentences into symbols. That's a really important skill. But we're going to stop this recording here, and I look forward to seeing you soon. We have a test. So the test is going to be half the 2 lessons that we did this week, and half the previous 6 lessons from the previous weeks. So please do the review and come prepared to take a little bit longer assessment this week than we have done in previous weeks. It's going to be 10 or 12 questions. instead of the usual 5. I look forward to seeing you soon.